The world watched, holding its breath, as uncertainty and fear rippled across continents. In living rooms, cafes, and public squares, people gathered around glowing screens, their faces tense with worry, as breaking news flashed urgent updates. In the spring of 2024, Iran launched a direct military assault on Israel, an unprecedented escalation that sent shockwaves far beyond the region. The night sky lit up with the fiery trails of missiles, marking a moment that would be etched into history. The long-simmering conflict, once fought in the shadows through proxies and covert operations, had burst into the open, shattering decades-old rules of engagement. Sirens wailed, explosions echoed, and ordinary life was instantly upended. This was not a sudden eruption but the result of years, if not decades, of rising tensions, missed opportunities for dialogue, and repeated warnings that went unheeded. Each confrontation, each provocation had brought the region closer to the brink. The immediate trigger was Iran's response to a suspected Israeli airstrike on its consulate in Damascus, which killed top Iranian officials, a red line crossed in the eyes of Tehran. The attack was seen as a direct challenge to Iranian sovereignty and pride. For Israel, this was another move in a long campaign to counter Iran's growing influence in the region and its nuclear ambitions. Israeli leaders framed their actions as necessary for national security, determined to prevent Iran from gaining a strategic upper hand. The world now faces a new, more volatile chapter in the Middle East, where old alliances are tested and new dangers emerge. The balance of power is shifting, and the risk of a wider conflict looms large. In the immediate aftermath, frantic diplomacy and military posturing unfolded. World leaders issued urgent statements, diplomats rushed into emergency meetings, and calls for restraint echoed across capitals, all in hopes of preventing a catastrophic regional war. Images of Israeli air defenses intercepting incoming missiles became a global symbol of just how close catastrophe loomed. The world watched in real time as technology and human resolve were tested under fire. The shadow war is over. Direct confrontation has begun. The potential to draw in superpowers and disrupt the world economy is real, as military jets scramble and financial markets react with volatility and fear. Understanding how we reach this point is essential for grasping today's fragile global order. The roots of this crisis run deep, shaped by history, ideology, and the ambitions of powerful states. The stakes have never been higher. The choices made now will echo for generations, shaping not just the fate of the Middle East, but the future of the world. Once, Iran and Israel were unlikely allies, sharing intelligence, trade, and strategic interests before 1979. The Islamic Revolution changed everything. The Shah was ousted, and Iran's new regime adopted a fiercely anti-Israel stance. The Israeli embassy in Tehran was shuttered, replaced by unwavering hostility. Iran began supporting groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, using proxies to pressure Israel without direct confrontation. This strategy created a ring of fire around Israel, fueling decades of proxy conflict. For Israel, Iran's rhetoric and support for militants became an existential threat, especially as Iran's nuclear ambitions grew. Israel's policy became one of relentless opposition, covert operations, cyber attacks, and diplomatic isolation. The friendship was not just broken, it was replaced by deep ideological enmity. The nuclear issue became the central flashpoint, driving both nations' actions. This transformation set the stage for today's dangerous rivalry. The shadow of 1979 still looms over every move. For years, Iran and Israel waged a relentless shadow war, a hidden conflict marked by assassinations, cyber attacks, and covert sabotage. This was a battle fought in the shadows, far from the eyes of the public, where every move was calculated and deniable. Sabotage operations and secret missions unfolded in the dead of night, with both sides seeking to outmaneuver the other without drawing global attention. Israel, determined to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions, targeted key facilities and scientists. Their goal, to slow Iran's progress toward a nuclear weapon, all while avoiding the outbreak of open war. In response, Iran turned to its network of proxies, like Hezbollah, amassing thousands of rockets along Israel's borders, and orchestrating attacks on Israeli and U.S. interests throughout the region. Both nations operated in the murky world of espionage, maintaining plausible deniability. Official statements were rare, and when pressed, leaders would neither confirm nor deny involvement. This dangerous equilibrium, governed by unwritten rules and mutual restraint, held for years. Each side knew how far they could push without triggering all-out war. But over time, the balance began to unravel. Attacks grew bolder and more frequent, especially on Syrian soil, where both sides tested each other's limits. Israel became increasingly open about its airstrikes, determined to prevent Iran from establishing a permanent military foothold in Syria, and sending a clear message to Tehran. The U.S. assassination of Qasem Soleimani in 2020 marked a dramatic escalation, shattering old boundaries and raising the stakes for everyone involved. Then, in April 2024, Israel struck Iran's consulate in Damascus, a move Iran saw as a direct attack on its sovereign territory. This was the final straw. That night, the shadow war ended. The world watched as the conflict erupted into the open, with explosions lighting up the sky and headlines flashing across screens. The era of secret operations and deniable warfare was over. The world braced for what would come next, as leaders scrambled to respond and ordinary people watched events unfold in real time. The end of the Shadow War marked the beginning of a new, more dangerous phase, one where every action was public and every risk was magnified. Now, the risks are out in the open, and the world holds its breath as the next chapter of this conflict begins. On April 13, 2024, Iran launched over 300 drones and missiles directly at Israel, a historic first. Air raid sirens wailed as Israel's multi-layered defenses, aided by the US, UK, France and Jordan, sprang into action. 99% of the projectiles were intercepted with only minor damage and one civilian injury. The attack shattered the old playbook. Iran was now willing to strike openly, not just through proxies. For Tehran, it was a demonstration of capability and resolve. For Israel, a sobering new reality. The psychological barrier was broken, and pressure to retaliate mounted. Israel's response was limited but pointed, striking an Iranian air defense site near a nuclear facility. Both sides claimed victory, but the region was left on edge. The precedent for direct state-on-state attacks had been set. The world narrowly avoided disaster, but the danger only deepened. The rules of the game had changed forever. The Iran-Israel conflict is not just a regional standoff, it's a global chess match, with the world's most powerful nations deeply invested in every move and countermove. The stakes are high, and the eyes of the world are fixed on the Middle East, where every decision could tip the balance of power. The United States stands as Israel's staunchest ally, providing billions in military aid, advanced weaponry, and direct defense support. American warships patrol nearby waters, signaling commitment but also caution. U.S. leaders are determined to back Israel yet remain wary of being drawn into a wider, uncontrollable war that could engulf the region and beyond. Meanwhile, Russia has drawn closer to Iran, forging a partnership that trades Iranian drones for advanced Russian military technology. This alliance complicates the regional balance, giving Iran new capabilities and Moscow a foothold in Middle Eastern affairs. For Moscow, the conflict is an opportunity to challenge U.S. influence, stretch American resources, and distract global attention from its own actions in Ukraine. Russia's moves are calculated, seeking to reshape the global order in its favor. China, the world's largest oil importer, has a different priority: stability. Maintaining strong ties with both Iran and Saudi Arabia, China positions itself as a potential peacemaker, eager to prevent disruptions that could threaten its energy security and economic growth. China's main goal is to protect its energy lifelines and economic interests. It urges de-escalation, quietly leveraging its influence behind the scenes, while closely watching the shifting power dynamics that could affect its future. The involvement of these superpowers adds layers of risk, uncertainty, and complexity to an already volatile situation. Their rivalries and alliances shape every development, making the conflict far more unpredictable. Every diplomatic move, every military maneuver can either help contain the conflict or risk igniting a much broader crisis that could spiral out of control. In this high-stakes environment, a single miscalculation or misunderstanding could trigger consequences that reverberate across continents. The region has become a proxy battleground, where global powers test their influence and resolve, using local conflicts to advance their own agendas. The stakes have grown far beyond the Middle East. Financial markets, energy supplies, and international alliances all hang in the balance. The world is interconnected, and the ripple effects of this conflict are felt everywhere. The world is watching, holding its breath. The margin for error is razor thin, and every move matters more than ever before. In this tense moment, the decisions of a few could shape the fate of millions. If diplomacy fails, a full-scale regional war could erupt. An Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear sites might trigger massive retaliation, missiles and drones targeting Israel, U.S. bases, and regional allies. Hezbollah could open a second front from Lebanon, overwhelming Israel's defenses and causing devastation. The conflict would likely spread to Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, turning the Middle East into a multi-front war zone. Civilian casualties would soar, and the U.S. could be drawn in, escalating the crisis internationally. A prolonged war with Iran would be bloody and unpredictable, with no easy victory. The nightmare global powers exploit the chaos, risking wider wars in Ukraine or Taiwan. Regional sparks can ignite global infernos. A wider Iran-Israel war would send shockwaves through the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil choke point, could be closed, causing oil prices to skyrocket. Energy costs would surge, triggering inflation and pushing fragile economies toward recession. Global supply chains would be thrown into chaos with shipping routes turned into war zones and massive delays for goods worldwide. No country would be immune. Everyone would feel the pain at the pump and the store. Investor confidence would collapse, financial markets would tumble, and governments would scramble to stabilize economies. The economic fallout would be deep and long-lasting. A regional war would threaten prosperity everywhere. The world's economic stability hangs in the balance. Preventing catastrophe demands urgent, skillful diplomacy. The immediate goal: de-escalation, with intermediaries like Qatar and Oman passing messages and clarifying red lines. Both sides need to prove strength without further bloodshed, restoring deterrence while avoiding escalation. The US must restrain Israel and warn Iran, balancing support with the need for peace. Long-term stability requires reviving nuclear negotiations and addressing Iran's missile program and regional proxies. A new comprehensive agreement is essential but difficult. International law and institutions like the UN must be strengthened for real dialogue. The world's major powers must pressure both sides to step back. The alternative is a conflict that could engulf the globe. The time for diplomacy is now. It's tempting to see the Iran-Israel conflict as distant, but its impact is global. Oil prices, grocery costs, and job security everywhere are tied to Middle East stability. A war could trigger a global recession, affecting households from Ohio to Osaka. Our interconnected world means no one is immune to these shocks. Beyond economics, this conflict tests the world's ability to prevent regional disputes from spiraling into global disasters. If diplomacy fails here, it sets a dangerous precedent for future crises. The institutions that have kept World War at bay for decades are being tested. This story is about more than missiles. It's about the world we want to live in. Do we choose law and diplomacy or chaos and war? The fate of millions and our own security hangs in the balance. The decisions made now will ripple across the globe. The brink is closer than we think.